What happens when the past comes knocking on a seemingly perfect marriage? This is the story of Ethan and Sophia, a couple whose world was turned upside down by a betrayal they never saw coming. A husband's trust, shattered. A wife's secret, exposed. And a love story, forever changed. What would you do if the past came knocking on a perfect marriage? Stick with us to hear this gripping story, and before we continue, subscribe to our channel and let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. In our next video, we'll send you a virtual hug. Sophia was the kind of woman everyone admired. A loving wife, a caring mother, and a hard-working professional. She seemed to have it all, a beautiful home, a stable job, and a husband who adored her. Ethan, her husband, was a man of few words but endless devotion. He was the kind of man who put his family first in everything. To him, Sophia was his best friend and partner. He believed their marriage was built on trust and love. They lived in a quiet suburb, the kind of place where kids played in the streets and neighbors waved from their front yards. Their home was filled with laughter and warmth, family dinners filled with jokes, movie nights on the couch, and weekends spent chasing their little boy around the park. Ethan often looked at Sophia and thought to himself, "I'm the luckiest man alive." He trusted her completely, never doubting her love for him. To Ethan, their life was a picture of happiness, unshakable and perfect. But what Ethan didn't know was that the past has a way of creeping into the present, and sometimes, it changes everything. And just like that, what seemed so certain, began to fall apart. Before Ethan, there was Daniel. Daniel was Sophia's first love, and their connection was intense. They were young, reckless, and thought they had forever. But life had other plans. Daniel moved abroad for a job, leaving Sophia behind with promises that couldn't be kept. The distance proved too much, and what once seemed unbreakable ended in heartbreak. Sophia was devastated, but she didn't let it consume her. She picked herself up, worked hard, and eventually met Ethan. Ethan was everything Daniel wasn't: steady, reliable, and deeply caring. He gave Sophia the kind of life she thought she'd never have. A life of stability and love. Years passed, and Daniel became nothing more than a distant memory. Or so she thought. One evening, at a mutual friend's gathering, Sophia saw him again. Daniel. He hadn't changed much, same confident smile, same way of speaking that once made her feel like she was the only person in the world. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Daniel approached her with a mix of excitement and regret. "Sophia," he said, his voice softer than she remembered. "It's been so long. I can't believe it's you." Sophia didn't know how to feel. Part of her wanted to walk away, but another part felt that familiar pull she hadn't felt in years. They exchanged numbers that night, just to catch up. But even then, Sophia couldn't ignore the strange feeling in her chest. A door she thought was closed had just been cracked open. At first, their conversations were harmless. A quick text here and there. A friendly check-in about life. "How have you been? Do you still love painting?" Simple questions. Nothing more. But as days turned into weeks, their messages became longer, more personal. Daniel shared stories about his regrets, how he wished things had been different between them. He told her how much he admired her strength, how he always wondered what could have been. Sophia tried to convince herself it was innocent. "We're just talking," she thought. "There's nothing wrong with catching up." But then came the phone calls. Late at night, when Ethan was asleep and the house was quiet. Their conversation stretched into hours, filled with laughter and nostalgia. With every call, Sophia felt herself slipping further into something she didn't fully understand. The first time they met in person, it was under the pretense of just a coffee. But as they sat across from each other, it felt like time had rewound. Daniel's charm was undeniable, and Sophia couldn't help but feel that spark again. Her guilt started to grow. She loved Ethan. She loved her family. But Daniel awakened feelings she thought were long gone. He made her question the life she had built. Was she happy? Had she settled for comfort over passion? Daniel played on her doubts. He told her how he never stopped thinking about her, how he believed they were meant to be. His words pulled at her heartstrings, making her believe that perhaps there was unfinished business between them. Sophia's actions became harder to hide. The guilt weighed on her, but the pull toward Daniel seemed even stronger. She didn't realize it, but she was standing on the edge of a decision that could change everything. Sophia was playing with fire, and she knew it. But sometimes, the heart has a way of leading us into the darkest corners, even when we know better. Ethan started noticing changes in Sophia. At first, it was small things. She seemed distracted during dinner, her phone was always within reach, and she smiled at messages she never shared with him. Ethan brushed it off, thinking maybe she was just stressed from work. But as days turned into weeks, the signs became harder to ignore. Sophia was staying up late, claiming she needed quiet time to focus on personal projects. Ethan would wake in the middle of the night to find her on the phone, speaking in hushed tones or quickly ending the call when he walked into the room. One evening, while tidying up the living room, Ethan noticed her phone buzzing on the table. The message preview caught his eye. "I can't stop thinking about the other night. When can we meet again?" His heart sank. His mind raced. Who could this be, he thought. He didn't say anything that night, but from then on, he started paying closer attention. Sophia's behavior became more erratic. She left the house without explaining where she was going, stayed out longer than usual, and gave vague excuses when asked. One day, Ethan noticed her carefully deleting messages from her phone, a habit she never had before. The final straw came when Ethan found an old receipt tucked in Sophia's purse. It was for a cozy cafe on the other side of town, a place they never visited together. The date and time matched an evening when Sophia claimed to be at work late. Ethan felt a wave of dread wash over him. The woman he trusted more than anything was keeping secrets from him. He needed answers, but he wasn't sure if he was ready to face the truth. Late one night, while Sophia was asleep, Ethan went through her phone. He scrolled through messages, piecing together the story. The name Daniel appeared repeatedly, texts, calls, and plans to meet. Ethan felt like the ground beneath him had disappeared. The next morning, Ethan couldn't hold it in any longer. As they sat down for breakfast, he placed Sophia's phone on the table. "Sophia," he said, his voice steady but strained, "who is Daniel?" Sophia froze, her face draining of color. She looked at the phone and then at Ethan, realizing there was no escape. I can explain," she stammered. "Explain?" Ethan's voice cracked as anger and heartbreak surged through him. "You've been lying to me, sneaking around, meeting with him behind my back. How could you do this?" Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes. "It wasn't supposed to mean anything," she whispered. "It started as just catching up, but I didn't mean for it to go this far." Ethan's fists clenched, his voice rising. "You didn't mean for it to go this far? You lied to me, Sophia. I trusted you." Sophia broke down, trying to explain her side. "I was confused, Ethan. Daniel made me remember who I used to be. I didn't mean to hurt you, I swear. I love you, but..." "But what?" Ethan interrupted, his voice trembling. "You love me, but you've been seeing him? How does that even make sense?" The argument spiraled, emotions running high. Ethan felt betrayed, angry, and deeply hurt. Sophia felt guilt and shame but also struggled to explain the emotions Daniel had stirred in her. Their young son, hearing the raised voices, walked into the room, his innocent face confused by what he was seeing. Ethan immediately softened, realizing how much the situation would affect their child. "Sophia, I can't do this right now," Ethan said, standing up and walking away. He needed time to process everything, but he knew their lives would never be the same. Ethan had discovered the truth, but the betrayal left scars that wouldn't heal easily. For Sophia, the consequences of her actions were just beginning. And for their son, the family he knew was starting to unravel. If this story has you hooked so far, show your support by giving this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who might need to hear it, because these are stories that matter. Ethan couldn't stay in the house any longer. The walls that once symbolized love and trust now felt suffocating, filled with memories of the betrayal. One evening, after tucking their son into bed, Ethan packed a small bag and left. "I need space," he said quietly to Sophia before walking out the door. He didn't slam it. He didn't yell. But the sound of the door closing was louder than any argument they'd ever had. Their son, confused by his father's absence, began asking questions. "Mom, where's Dad? Did I do something wrong?" Sophia's heart broke every time she had to reassure him. "Daddy just needs some time to think, sweetheart," she said, forcing a smile. But the tension in the house was impossible to hide. Sophia carried the weight of her choices everywhere she went. Friends and family started to notice something was wrong. A once vibrant and confident woman, she now seemed withdrawn, avoiding eye contact and giving vague answers when asked about Ethan. Word began to spread. Close friends pieced together the truth, and the judgment came swiftly. "How could she do that to him?" whispered one of her closest friends at a neighborhood gathering. Sophia felt the shame sink in deeper. She had hurt the man who had always been there for her, and now she was facing the consequences, not just from Ethan but from everyone around her. At home, her son became quieter, his once playful energy replaced with questions and sadness. He would sit at the table during meals, looking from his mother's face to the empty chair where his father used to sit. "Mom, will Dad come back?" he asked one night, his voice trembling. Sophia fought back tears. "I hope so, darling," she whispered, pulling him close. But deep down, she wasn't sure. The guilt weighed heavily on Sophia. The home felt emptier, and the judgment from others only made her feel more isolated. She knew she had to face the consequences, but the toll it was taking on her son made it unbearable. For Ethan, leaving the house was just the first step. He found himself alone in a small apartment, sitting in silence most nights, trying to process what had happened. At first, he didn't know where to turn. The betrayal had left him feeling angry, hurt, and deeply insecure. But he knew he couldn't let it destroy him. One evening, Ethan called his closest friend, Mark. "I don't even know how to start moving forward," he admitted over the phone. Mark listened patiently and offered support, encouraging Ethan to focus on himself. Ethan also decided to see a therapist, someone who could help him sort through the emotions that felt too overwhelming to face alone. In those sessions, he began to understand that Sophia's actions, while devastating, didn't define his worth. Slowly, Ethan started to rediscover himself. He took up hobbies he had abandoned over the years, like running and woodworking. He began reconnecting with old friends and finding moments of joy outside the pain. Ethan met with Sophia in the park where they used to take their son. It was the first time they had sat down together since the confrontation. "I don't know if I can forget what happened," he said honestly. "But I don't want our son to grow up in a broken home." Sophia nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes, Ethan," she said. "I know I can't erase what I did, but I want to prove to you that I can be better, for you and for him." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. Ethan decided to move back home, not as a husband ready to reconcile, but as a father who wanted to give his family a chance. He told Sophia it would take time, perhaps years, to rebuild what was lost. And she promised to work for it every single day. Betrayal doesn't just break trust, it breaks hearts, homes, and the people involved. For Sophia and Ethan, the journey forward is uncertain, but it's a reminder that even in the face of pain, resilience can create a path to healing. What would you have done if you were in Ethan's shoes? Could you forgive, or would the trust be too broken to repair? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell for more stories that make us reflect on life, love, and the choices we make.